Hello everyone, welcome to the Rhino demo for the butterfly stool. What you see on the screen is a couple of samples and iteration of the stool, and I want to kind of give you an overview before we jump into the demo. So here you have my setup for all the curve and the line work to create the stool. And here are some 4 examples of the various techniques and pitfalls that you might run into. So in this particular case, this is actually a sweep 1, not sweep 2. Well, actually, no, sweep 2. I have one rail here and another rail here and the section of the stool. And when I do that particular sweep, you can see that I lose control on the other end. The sweep actually does go through both rails, but it doesn't really know how to resolve that side of the curve because of this curvature. So to solve that, you want to do sweep 2, but you want to have 2 curves as a section profile. Section profile here, you take a copy of that and paste it here, and then you click on both of the sections, so then Rhino knows how to maintain that edge as it finishes the sweep. What you want to do after that is to give it a thickness to the stool, and this is done by using a command called offset surface. The thing is that by default there is an option where you can offset the surface very loosely, and by default it's usually no. So what Rhino tries to do is to really replicate this surface as close and tight as possible as is offsetting. So it actually chops up the surfaces to really fine patches, if you will, and that allows Rhino to really accurately interpret that surface as an offset. Well, it's good and bad, because obviously the surface interpretation is good, but also you have a lot of extra faces, and if you want to do some additional editing, that could come in to be a little bit of a pain. So if you redid the offset surface but use the command or turn off the function of loose and set it to yes, meaning keep it loose and be as accurate as possible, I guess. And then you can see that the offset surface here is a lot more simple, and it's still pretty accurate enough where your model is still a good representation. So that will be an overview, and we will jump into the actual demonstration. So at this stage in your modeling learning process, I'd like you guys to actually model more in scale and actually set up your model making a little bit more accurately. So first thing that I would probably advise you guys to do is to really set up some reference planes or some reference lines. So here's a line, and I'm going to use my XY as a coordinate. Start at 0 and just draw a tall line, and then draw another line that I can snap to, and do that. I'm going to move that using midpoint, so I have like a really nice reference. So here's a line here, and I'm saying that this stool is about 9 inches wide and probably 7 inches from here to here. I'm going to offset this line 9 inches. Offset 9. Make sure that you have your cap to none so that you just get a clean offset line instead of a box. Offset again 7 inches. So that gives me a reference point here for that guy. All right. And I'm going to now go to this perspective view and draw a few lines. Hold down Shift for a straight line. Hold down Shift. And then I'm going to make the stool 12 inches wide, so I'm going to offset this line 12 inches. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty set up. Oh, let's offset for 18. So I'm going to go to top view here and offset 18. There we go. Hi, I'm back. I just realized that I shouldn't have offset this line at the 18-inch mark. I should have offset it in this view. I was wondering what was happening. Offset 18. So now I have a framework of my stool. So I'm going to replicate this curve. There's a couple of ways to do this thing, but I'm going to kind of walk you through here. So since I want to maintain some sort of a tangency here or curve, good practice is to start 2 control curves at the same horizontal plane, and then you can start to curve them. And then I'm going to just randomly come somewhere here, but this curve from here to here, I want that to be tangent. So wherever I establish my point where I guess I'm going to start curving, I'm also going to establish our same horizontal point. So I'm holding down shift so I go straight across, and I'm clicking here, and then I'm going to bend it back down straight across, and then finish off my curve. Then actually I'm going to go hit near so I can hit this line and then come straight down and hit the endpoint. So what that does is that having, I'll turn on the control points, having these 2 points on the same axes will allow, if I had to mirror this curve for whatever reason, this continuing curve would be tangent. And same thing here, having these 2 points on the same axes and that on the same axis, that gives me a really smooth transition. And at this point, I could actually go ahead and finesse some of these points to kind of get the curvature that I want. Maybe I can move this a little bit. No, I actually kind of like it a little bit tighter, like that. All right, so I have my curve set up for my spline. And let me show it to you guys in perspective view here. So what I want to do now is I want to create my 2 rails, one at the top and one at the bottom, but the bottom rail is going to be a slight curve. So I'm going to go ahead and trim these lines. Yeah, that's fine, like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy that. From there to there. So I already have my rail here at the top. Now I just have to create my curve rail. And the curve rail, I'll just use a simple arc tool. This is what I like to use. So it's basically you get your start of your arc, the end of your arc, and then you can stretch it to anything you want. Obviously I'm going to go to the midpoint here. And so I have my general shapes ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and first show you this and why doing a 2 rail sweep without additional control may not give you the shape that you want. So I'm going to go to my sweep 2, select my first rail, my second rail, and then my section. And then when I sweep, you can see that as it starts to sweep, it doesn't really know how to finish that straight because of this curvature and the way how Rhino is interpreting that. So, and that's why you're going to get something like that. So to have better control, what you want to do is you want to select this section and select an additional section here to actually help Rhino finish that surface. So what you want to do is you want to take that and you want to copy that. Oops. From here to here, and use these 2 sections as an additional guide to your sweep. So I'm going to go back to sweep 2, first rail, second rail. Here's my section here, and I'm also telling Rhino here's another section for you to use as a guide, and that gets you a lot more accurate surface. So having that technique will give you a surface like that. So I want to show you something else. So you could have as many sections as you want to control how Rhino sweeps along this rail. So for instance, let's just go ahead and copy one of these. To the middle, and then let's change the oops, I'm going to go to move command, which allows me to snap to things. Where's my midpoint? Mid, there it is. And let's change the properties of this. So I have 3 sections, and this section is completely different profile than these other 2 right here. Let's really push it. Oops, not that. And then I'll use the sweep 2 section, but I'll use 3 sections. So here you go. Sweep 2. First rail, second rail, go from here to here to here, and you get that, right? And you can add as many sections as you want, but obviously the more sections you have, the more sections you need to edit and make sure that the curvature is perfect. So you'll know how to do it based on making many more models. So now we do have that. And how do we get this to look like that? So the first thing to do is obviously we need to give it some thickness to this surface. Right now this surface has 0 thickness. So the easiest way to do that is to do an offset surface. And then we select that. And then we give it a distance. Right now 1/2 inch is perfect. And it's going to, these arrows here are telling you that it's going to offset, I guess, outwards, if you will. The most important thing is that you may is to pay attention to this area, because your setting by default may have this loose setting as set to be no, which means that what that means is that you're asking Rhino to interpret this surface almost exactly 0.5 inches with a 0.5 offset. So if I keep that to no, it's going to try to be as accurate as possible. So therefore, it subdivides all these points and gives you lots of these faces, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But later on, if you want to do additional editing, you have a lot more faces to deal with than having 1, 2, 3, 4 faces here, right? So you want to be cautious when you're kind of making Rhino stay very accurate. So when you do the offset command, make sure that you see this option and you check that to be yes, which means that, hey, Rhino, interpret it as close as possible, but also maintain, my surface count, if you will. So if I keep that, you'll see that it's a lot more less complex, if you will, and the shape is still relatively exactly where we want it to be. So at this point, guys, you should be able to just simply, or is it? I think it's this guy. You should be able to simply mirror this. And you have your butterfly stool. Okay? All right, guys. We'll see you next time.